Hey guys, welcome back to the Disclosure Team YouTube channel. In this interview, I speak to former CIA operative Ben Smith. He is the host of the TV show Roswell, The First Witness. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. So Ben, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to speaking to you. So before we jump into talking about the show, could you just give us a little bit of a background on yourself, about your career and things like that?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ben Smith. I'm a former CIA operations officer, a case officer. In Hollywood parlance, that would be like a field operative. But my job was to collect intelligence overseas, abroad, from human sources. So I would recruit and handle sources, collect intelligence, use tradecraft to protect their identities and the information, and then write reports, a lot of reports, and send them back to Washington. I resigned a couple years ago to pursue creative interests, investigative interests like Roswell, and also to pursue my now wife. So made that choice. Said, "Hey, look, I've got one bird in the hand. I've had a pretty exciting career, pretty stressful life,
Right.
and I got a good thing going here. So let's see what else I can do." So I resigned, and since then I've done a little bit of TV work. Appeared on a show for Discovery Channel. We went to Colombia looking for Pablo Escobar's money, which was pretty fun. And had a good time with one of my buddies, one of my colleagues. And then did a little documentary about looking for a World War II plane in Burma, which we found, which is great. A buddy of mine, an FBI agent, a buddy of mine. And now this show. So jumping right in the thick of the UFO world, the universe, I should say, and really kind of wrestling with the facts. And I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying the space, and wished I could have been doing it my whole life.
So before you took on this job, hosting the Roswell show, what was your history with UFOs? Was it an interest at all, or was it just something that you didn't really think about that often?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually am a big science fiction fan in public media, right? So a huge fan of the X-Files and all a lot of the great science fiction classics. Arthur C. Clarke is a huge passion of mine. So I always was interested in that space. And before I even got involved with this project, actually, I had to prove a little bit of my credibility to History Channel. I was like, no, I really want to do this investigation. And like, yeah, but you have to prove you love UFOs. But I'd actually been to a disclosure group. I live in New York City, and I'd been to a group many times just out of personal interest to try to figure out, like, what are these people experiencing? Can I use my skills to kind of to put together some overarching theory of ufology, like what's going on? And this is before the government started getting involved with these questions, and then also, honestly, I've also written, this is not to put a personal plug because it's very bad, but I also wrote like a science fiction novel, dealing with this idea that if aliens are here, and they want to be secret about it, how would they operate? How would they move about this space? How would they collect information on the human species? And I brought in my background in espionage and intelligence to figure out, like, all right, how could they be hiding? Where would they be putting their bases? And it was just more of a thought experiment, really. A terrible novel, but I had a great time doing it. And I think it really prepped me to be ready to go out and jump right in the middle of the Roswell story. The foundation story of ufology in the U.S.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then you obviously, realize that you're going to be hosting this show on Roswell, which is probably the most famous UFO case in history. Did you feel any anxiety, or was it just pure excitement when you knew you were going to be looking into such a big case?
Mostly pure excitement, because that usually gets the better part of me. The idea of adventure, of new knowledge, of a new experience kind of really drew me to that place. But also a little, like you said, anxiety that everything's been done. I'm a total noob. I may even have like a background hurtful to the investigation for people who are already, already suspicious of government or former government personnel working in this space. Although Lou Elizondo made it quite a lot easier for me. of being involved in this space at all. So it was definitely daunting to try to catch up. And then there's so much research has been done over decades. But fortunately, and that's the best part, that part of the show, and for me, learning experience, going to interview all of the best investigators, Don Schmidt, Leslie Kane from the New York Times, like all of these phenomenal people that have been studying this for decades, and like just plugging into their brains and getting right to the facts was really fun.
That sounds great. And am I right in saying that there was actually some new evidence that you were able to use to help with the investigation for the show?
Yeah.
Just talk about that briefly.
Yeah, two main pieces of evidence. One, we have a journal that belonged to Jesse Marcel Sr. So with dates, with information, logs in that journal capturing the range of the Roswell experience. So this journal was found among few possessions passed down to his children, right? So this grandchildren and then grandchildren, they got a trunk, and in the trunk was some clothes and stuff, and then a little binder, and in that binder was some military documents and this journal. So right away, like, what of all the things to pass down, the heirlooms that you could give to your children, why this journal? And then when you crack it open, it's got dates that span Roswell. And then also, as a former intelligence officer, you can see that like something's off about it. There's some cryptic jargon, there's some language, there's some interesting quotes, but like there's no narrative, and there's dates at every point. So for me, for someone who has used sort of techniques to capture information in plain sight, like this seems like a technique to either remember something, to recall facts, or to hide something potentially through encryption. So jumps out right away. Okay, here's a primary source document. These are rare, and there's never been anything else that we've seen in the possession of a witness at Roswell with for that time period. So of course, then we had to authenticate it, and go down that rabbit hole. Like, who wrote it? Why? What's in it? Can we decrypt it? Is there any hidden messages? The other piece of data that we had, which is super interesting, or the new evidence, was using technology to go actually do some forensic investigation of the crash site itself, which has never been done before. They've done some archaeological digs. Those tend to be very focused, and the permitting is so hard. You can only dig so deep, and it can be quite onerous. But to go out there, get permits to bring some drone technology to image every little piece of sand on that, in multispectral, across the spectrum of radio frequencies, right? So we're looking infrared. We're looking for we brought a gamma radiation detector out there. We brought all kinds of cool stuff, gizmos, to see, is there anything left, right? Can we find evidence of a UFO crash? Is there anything left to be found? And can we find anything that corroborates eyewitness reports, like a gouge or something in the earth that might represent a high impact of something into the earth? And can we find any evidence of a cover-up? So were there bulldozers out here removing stuff, and cranes and large trucks? And is there any evidence of a large-scale military footprint here? So those are kind of the things we were after going out to this site, which hadn't been done before, which is pretty fun.
Oh, that's great. And am I right in saying that you also had somebody analyze the actual photo of Major Marcel with the weather balloon debris?
Right. So we brought in some body language experts. So as a former intelligence officer, I have to vouch for everything that we do and say. And we actually, producers on this show were also former journalists, so very committed to backing up any potential claims we make, or vetting eyewitness reports or any evidence, scientifically, or as best scientifically as we can, to prove that it in fact is what they say it is. So we brought this approach to every kind of piece. A witness says this, all right, well, can we validate what they say? So in this particular instance, that Jesse Marcel, there's two things we did for this photo. Sorry. One is we brought in Jesse, a body language expert, to come in and read Jesse's face and figures and family, and looking at that across footage from different. Sorry, I'm waving my hands in front of the camera here. But looking at, is Jesse lying in this photo? What is he saying? What is his body communicating at a subconscious level that can't be determined? And to confirm some of the interesting things that his family claimed and he claimed. And then also we were able to take a look at this photograph and dive into it at the molecular level. So using some new imaging technology, supercomputers to process this, to getting past just the kind of like the two-dimensional thing and actually looking at the silver grains inside the photo to see if we could tease out more details. The General Ramey memo, right, the famous memo, and he's holding something in his hand that's blurry. Well, can we like enhance this and actually look down at the molecular level and see like where are those connections being made in this lettering? So we did, everything. Someone says they have UFO debris, we're going to test it. Oh, we find something on the site, we're going to test it. Just really bringing in that science and technology to find answers.
Excellent. And did you look into where the debris may have possibly been taken after the alleged crash?
So we started with the series is titled First Witness, mostly because we focused on the Roswell or the Marcel family, because he was the most credible witness, apart from Mac Brazel, who was there on site as well.
Yeah.
And the first to experience this and potentially kept debris to pass it on to his children. So we focused on that. And I think in latter, we did chase down threads. We don't get to them in the show. And we weren't able to get finality on some of those leads just because of the limited resources and time. But we do know from witnesses that it went to Dallas, the airfield in Dallas, and then it went on to a base in Ohio. And we did talk to some family members and some individuals who claimed that, yeah, my uncle was a pilot and he was in charge of the logistics for that, or for the father. They didn't really make it into the show either, but we did talk to plenty of witnesses. Say, yeah, my father was somebody on that flight, and he said something crazy happened, and it wasn't a weather balloon. So just a lot of confirming tertiary evidence, confirming kind of the general trajectory of events that came out, immediately after that big press release.
Great. Now, you mentioned that you met Leslie Kane, the New York Times journalist, and she was discussing her investigation into more recent events, such as the 2004 Nimitz encounter with the Tic Tac.
Right.
Have you got any thoughts on that case?
Well, probably not any more intelligent than other people have said. I as a case officer, my job was human collection, so collecting from human sources. I didn't really deal with technology. Only when it may have involved like foreign craft. When I read the CIA's releases of declassified documents from the CIA, I see a lot of reports about the UFO perspective is, well, someone said they saw a UFO. Well, we think it's some advanced technology, some advanced bomber, some fighter, maybe missile technology. Let's go collect on the UFO because it could be like an immediate threat in known human capabilities. So it was, in my perspective, in reading those documents, it was never quite, let's go after this information because we actually think it's a UFO. It was always something else. Like, sure, the witness says this, but we actually think it's this. In terms of the Tic Tac videos, I'm as perplexed as anybody. I think some of the convincing idea or quote, and I have to look up the YouTube video here. I could send you the link afterwards, but I'm sure you've seen it. One of the pilots I found it on Reddit. I'm a big fan of the UFO subreddit. One of the pilots says, "Hey, look, who captured that footage. I have seen things I wasn't supposed to see before. In my mind, that's experimental aircraft, that's experimental missile technology, something. He's seen it before. Every time that happens, as soon as he gets off that plane, somebody's on that airfield getting him to sign an NDA. And he says, at this point, like, nope, there was nobody. Nobody came to make me sign an NDA. And to me, that's pretty convincing that, that is something, if it is truly experimental, I don't think any government agency would risk something like that getting out exposed, and they would certainly enforce an NDA. So that was pretty convincing for me, but that's, the best that I have to go on in my experience, with that kind of field.
Excellent. So just going back to the Roswell case and your investigations, how did it feel towards the end or at the end of the investigation, speaking with the grandchildren of Jesse Marcel Sr.? Were they you know, how did they feel about the outcome of your investigation?
They were quite pleased. I felt we were able to establish just a great rapport and great connection, and I think they were really finally pleased that their grandfather was being vindicated. Right, that there was a mountain of evidence and others who came out to say the same thing. I feel they felt that he had been burned a little bit by the government, that they hadn't backed him up on what he saw, and they threw him under the bus when it was convenient, and you know, maligned his credibility. And to research this and find out, no, he wasn't crazy, he wasn't a liar. Do we have 100% certainty? As an investigator, do I have 100% certainty that he had possession of a UFO in his hands? I don't have that yet. That's what I need. But do I believe him that he believed it? Yes. Do I think he was lying to himself and others for fame or for a last hurrah before, you know, in his old age? No, I don't. I think he was telling the truth. And for the family to go through that investigation with me and watch me kind of arrive to the same conclusion was very validating for them. And it was just a great experience to be involved with the family.
Excellent. I'm really glad to hear that. So finally, my last real question is, after all of this, what do you think crashed on that day in 1947?
Well, this is the frustration of doing a TV show, is that there's still evidence out there. You know, like the show ended, we blew through our budget in record time. And then COVID hit. So we didn't get to investigate all of the little leads that we had yet to tie off. And, you know, this is the interesting mix between media and, journalism and like scientific research, right? All of that costs money. And to do something of this magnitude costs a lot of money. And there are no institutions that are going to risk their credibility giving any one of their doctorates or PhD candidates money to go research something like this. So we don't get that level of scientific scrutiny that we want. And then, you know, the media side has to make money on this stuff to keep the dream alive, to hopefully do more, to take on other projects that have of public interest. And yet sometimes there's not enough. Like people, they want complete answers every time. And these things take multiple seasons, and nobody's doing this for charity, right? Like there are a few people who do it for their own passion, like some of the famous researchers out there, like Don Schmidt and others, who do this their whole lives. They put into this project. So a program like this falls right in the middle, that we have to attract people to watch this show because it's cool and it's exciting, and we do make progress in answering some pretty parts of this mystery that were unsolved before. But the journey's not over, and there's more to collect. So, you know, if it's successful, if the show attracts enough viewers, we can justify going. Like, these shows are expensive, like really, really expensive to make, and it's taking a lot of risk to send a whole film crew and live out in the desert for 6 weeks, you know, out at the crash site, which is what we did. You know, it's insane. But except to say that, like, this is you know, it's a balance, and we did the best we can, and there's more to find out. So at the end of the day, what do I believe? I'm still waiting. The jury's out. We got a few pings of some strange readings in that debris field. I think there's something still buried there. Whether that's you know, if it's a neoprene, tinfoil coated neoprene, that could support the mogul theory that this was a top secret, you know, listening device flown over the Soviet Union. If it's something else, then now it raises all new kinds of questions. We did plenty of testing on debris that people volunteered that they had collected from the debris field, and the reports were inconclusive. We would need to destroy the actual piece of evidence to determine whether it was extraterrestrial aluminum, like that alloy, that some of the isotopes in that piece of metal were shaped outside of you know, Earth's origins. Well, then we need to destroy it. And well, then who's going to give up their one piece of Roswell debris? So, but you know, if we continue this investigation long enough, we could attract enough attention, bring enough credibility to it from the the media or the government perspective, maybe we can force more openness and honesty on this issue. Because I personally, I think that I don't buy the mogul balloon project. I don't think the facts support that. I think the government was lying about the cover-up. I think there was a cover-up. I think that there's still information out there hidden, whether willfully or just through negligence or just through time, because it happens over time. There's boxes of information still around that if people took this seriously, they could find and they could disclose. And I think it's there. I think it's there to be found. So I hope that the government starts taking more accountability for cover stories, things that it uses to sell secret programs to the public. I think the pendulum is swinging now, where we're seeing the negative side of that, the unexpected consequences of something like that, where now we have a crisis of trust in government, which is something that I think disclosure and certainly and more honesty on these issues could bridge that gap. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. But so that's a long way of saying, like, I'm still agnostic. I totally believe the Marcel family and Jesse Marcel's experience, but I need that evidence, and I don't have it yet. But there are some clues indicating that, and more information to be found that could validate what the witnesses are saying. Coming into this, I thought, well, this is going to be a 2-week investigation, because I'm going to sit down with the interviewer, with not the suspect, it's going to sit down with the interviewee, the subject, and I'm going to say it's going to take me about 10-15 minutes to get an emotional feel for this person, 10-15 minutes to hear the length of their story, maybe 3 or 4 hours or days to sort of cross-examine with different kinds of questions from different angles to see about consistency and whether there are gaps in the story, or where I'm getting signals of a deception. I thought that I would do that a couple of times, and I'd see, oh, okay, well, this is there's not really much here, except that every time I did this, it raised new questions that we could chase, and then it ended up turning up new witnesses or new information and things that had not been pursued before. So I was totally confused, by the end. I'm like, oh God, I'm supposed to have an answer. People want answers, and I don't. But I think it's exciting, and I think we're on the right path.
Excellent. That's so fantastic, and I cannot wait to see the show over here in the UK. But for now, Ben, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be on your show, be a part of the discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the interview. For everyone in the UK, you can watch the show Roswell, The First Witness, November the 1st through to the 6th on Blaze TV as part of UFO Week. Thank you.